Jisho Zanmai. Samadhi as Experience of the Self by Eihei Dogen, from Shobogenzo, the Treasury of the True Dharma Eye. What the Buddhas and the Patriarchs have authentically transmitted from all the Buddhas and the 7 Buddhas is Samadhi as the state of experiencing the self. It is what is called sometimes to follow a good counselor, sometimes to follow the suttas. This state is just the eyes of the Buddhist patriarchs. For this reason, the eternal Buddha Soke asks a monk, "Do you rely upon practice and experience or not?" The monk says, "It is not that there is no practice and experience, but to taint it is impossible." So remember, untainted practice and experience is the Buddhist patriarchs themselves, and is the Buddhist patriarch's Samadhi as the thunderclap, wind, and rolling thunder. Just in the moment of following a good counselor, sometimes we see half of each other's face, sometimes we see half of each other's body, sometimes we see the whole of each other's face, and sometimes we see the whole of each other's body. There are instances of meeting in each other half of the self, and there are instances of meeting in each other half of the external world. We experience in each other the state in which the head of a god is covered with hair, and we experience in each other the state in which the face of a demon is topped by horns. We have the experience of following circumstances while going among alien types, and we go on changing while living among like beings. In these situations, we do not know how many thousand myriad times we throw away the body for the sake of Dharma, and we do not know for how many kotis of 100 kalpas we seek Dharma for the sake of our own body. This is the vigorous activity of following a good counselor, and it is the actual condition of exploring the self and suiting the self. At the time of mutual realization, in the wink of an eye, this condition possesses a smiling face, and on the occasion of prostration to attainment of the marrow, it cuts off an arm. In sum, from the time before and after the 7 Buddhas, to beyond the time of the 6th Patriarch, the good counselors who have met themselves are not 1 and not 2, and the good counselors who have met the external world are neither of the past nor of the present. In the moment of following the sutras, when we investigate the skin, flesh, bones and marrow of the self, and get free of the skin, flesh, bones and marrow of the self, peach blossoms are seen protruding from the eyes themselves, and the sound of bamboo is heard thundering from the ears themselves. In general, when we follow and practice the sutras truly come forth. The meaning of the sutras is the whole universe in 10 directions: mountains, rivers, and the earth, grass and trees, self and others. It is eating meals and putting on clothes, instantaneous movements and demeanors. When we pursue the truth following these texts, each of which is a sutra, countless thousand myriad volumes of totally unprecedented sutras manifest themselves in reality and exist before us. They have lines of characters of affirmation that are conspicuous as they are, and their verses of characters of negation are unmistakably clear. When, becoming able to meet them, we muster the body-mind to learn in practice, therein using up long eons, or making use of long eons, the destination that is thorough understanding inevitably exists. When we let go of body and mind in order to learn in practice, therein gouging out eternity, or soaring beyond eternity, we inevitably realize the virtue of receiving and retaining sutras. The Sanskrit texts of India, translated into Chinese books of Dharma, now number not even 5,000 fascicles. Among these, there are sutras of the 3 vehicles, the 5 vehicles, the 9 parts, and the 12 parts, and they are all sutras that we should follow and practice. Even if we intended to avoid following them, it would be impossible. Thus, they have sometimes become the I, and have sometimes become my marrow. They are horns on the head being right, and a tail being right. We receive this state from others, and we impart this state to others. At the same time, it is just the lively springing out of eyes themselves, which gets free of self and others. And it is just the transmission of my marrow itself, which is liberated from self and others. Because eyes and my marrow are beyond self and beyond others, Buddhist patriarchs have authentically transmitted them from the past to the past, and Buddhist patriarchs pass them on from the present to the present. There are sutras as staffs that preach the length and preach the breadth, naturally breaking emptiness and breaking existence. There are sutras as fly whisks that cleanse snow and cleanse frost. There are 1 order and 2 orders of sutras as zazen. There are sutras as kashayas, with 10 scrolls per volume. These are guarded and maintained by the Buddhist patriarchs. Following sutras like these, we perform, practice, and experience, and attain the truth. causing to exist sometimes God faces and human faces, and sometimes sun faces and moon faces. The effort of following the sutras is realized. At the same time, all instances of following good counselors and of following the sutras are just to follow the self. A sutra is naturally a sutra of the self, and a good counselor is naturally a good counselor of the self. That being so, thorough exploration of good counselors is thorough exploration of the self. To take up the 100 weeds is to take up the self. To take up the 10,000 trees is to take up the self. We learn in practice that the self is inevitably efforts like these. In this learning in practice, we get rid of the self, and we experience the self as exact accordance. For this reason, in the great truth of the Buddhist patriarchs, there are concrete tools for experiencing the self and realizing the self. But if we are not Buddhist patriarchs as rightful successors, we do not receive their authentic transmission. There are concrete tools that have been received from rightful successor to rightful successor. But if we are other than the bones and marrow of the Buddhist patriarchs, we do not receive their authentic transmission. Because we learn in practice like this, during the transmission and reception to and from others, the transmission exists as, "You have got my marrow," and "I transmit the right Dharma I treasury that I possess to Mahakasyapa." Preaching is not necessarily connected with self and others. Preaching for others is just preaching for the self. It is listening and preaching in which self and self experience the same state. One ear is listening and one ear is preaching. One tongue is preaching and one tongue is listening, and so on for eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, for the sense organs, their consciousness, and their objects. Going further, there is experience, and there is practice with one body and one mind. It is the ears themselves listening and preaching, and the tongue itself listening and preaching. Yesterday we were preaching to others, an exception to the rule, but today we are preaching to others, an established rule. In this way, the faces of the sun line up, one after another, and the faces of the moon line up, one after another. To preach Dharma and to practice Dharma for the benefit of others is to hear Dharma, to clarify Dharma, and to experience Dharma in our whole life at each moment. even in this present life, if we are sincere in preaching Dharma to others, our own attainment of Dharma is made easy. Or if we help and encourage other people to listen to Dharma, our own learning of Dharma receives good sustenance. We receive sustenance in our body, and we receive sustenance in our mind. If we hinder others in listening to Dharma, our own listening to Dharma is hindered. To preach Dharma and to listen to Dharma with our whole body at each moment, in our whole life at each moment, is to hear Dharma in every age, and is to listen again in the present age to Dharma that was authentically transmitted to us in the past. We are born in Dharma, and we die in Dharma. And so, having received the authentic transmission of the Dharma, while in the whole universe in 10 directions, we listen to it in our whole life at each moment, and practice it with our whole body at each moment. Because we can realize our whole life at each moment in Dharma, and make our whole body at each moment into Dharma, we bring together both single molecules and the universal order, and let them experience Dharma. That being so, having heard a word in the East, we should preach it to a person on coming to the West. This is to use oneself to make effort in listening and preaching as one act, and it is to practice and experience the Eastern self and the Western self as one self. In any event, we should be glad to, should hope to, and should resolve to bring the Buddha Dharma and the Patriarch's truth close to our own body-mind, and to practice them. We should extend the practice from an hour to a day, and from a year to a lifetime. We should let the Buddha Dharma play as our soul. This is called not passing any life in vain. Do not think, on the contrary, that because we are not yet clear, we should not preach for other people. If we expect clarification, we will not achieve it, even in countless kalpas. Even if we have clarified human Buddhas, we should further clarify celestial Buddhas. Even if we have clarified the mind of mountains, we should further clarify the mind of waters. Even if we have clarified dharmas arisen from causes and conditions, we should further clarify dharmas that are beyond causes and conditions. Even if we have clarified the outer limits of a Buddhist patriarch, we should further clarify the ascendant state of a Buddhist patriarch. To intend to complete the clarification of these things in one generation, and thereafter to act for the benefit of others, is not diligent effort, is not to be a stout fellow, and is not learning in practice. In sum, as students of the truth of the Buddhist patriarchs, from time to time we learn in practice one method or one standard. We let our will to teach others rise to pierce the heavens. We thereby get free of self and others. Going further, if we exhaustively explore the self, we will already have exhaustively explored the external world. And if we exhaustively explore the external world, we will already have exhaustively explored the self. Unless received from a master, this Buddhist standard cannot be realized in bodily experience, even by the innately intelligent. If the innately intelligent never meet a master, they do not know that which is beyond innate intelligence, and do not know that which is neither innate nor intelligence. Even if they are innately intelligent, they cannot thereby know the great truth of the Buddhist patriarchs. After they learn it, they can know it. To realize the self in bodily experience, and to realize the external world in bodily experience, is the great truth of the Buddhist patriarchs. We should just utilize our own beginner's state of learning in practice in order to experience communion with the beginner's state of learning in practice of the external world. From the stage of the beginner onwards, to continue experiencing together both the self and the external world, is to be in touch with the ultimate state of communion. As we work on the self, so we should promote the work of the external world. However, hearing the words, experience of the self, realization of the self, and so on, crude people think that we need not receive the transmission from a teacher, but should study by ourselves. This is a great mistake. Those who wrongly conceive the thoughts and discriminations of subjective understanding, and who have no transmission from a master, are non-Buddhists of Indian naturalism. How could people who cannot discern this be people of the Buddha's truth? There are those, moreover, who when they hear the words experience of the self, because they suppose it to be an accumulation of the 5 skandhas, equate it with Hinayana, self-discipline. Many people who do not know the difference between the great vehicle and the small vehicle experience themselves as the descendants of Buddhist patriarchs, but what person of clear eyes could be deceived by them? In the great Song era of Shoko, there is a certain Soko, the Zen master Dai-e of Kinzan mountain. Originally, he is a student of sutras and commentaries, While traveling from district to district, he becomes a follower of Zen Master Ri of Senshu and studies Unmon's discussions of the ancients, together with Secho's eulogies and discussions of the ancients. This is the beginning of his learning in practice. Not understanding the ways of Unmon, he eventually practices in the order of Master Tozan Dobi. But Dobi, in the end, does not grant that Soko entered his inner sanctum. Master Dobi is a Dharma child of Master Fuyo. We should never rank him with idle people seated in a back row. Zen Master Soko continues his learning in practice for rather a long time, but he is unable to grope for Dobi's skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. Still less does he know even of the existence of eyes inside atoms. On one occasion, as soon as he hears that in the truth of the Buddhist patriarchs there is a method to request the certificate of succession by burning incense on the elbow, Soko eagerly requests the certificate of succession from Master Dobi, but Master Dobi does not allow it. Finally, he says, "If you want to succeed to the Dharma, do not be hasty. Just be diligent here and now. The Buddhist patriarch's transmission is not given at random. I do not begrudge you the transmission. It is simply that you are not yet equipped with eyes." Then Soko says, "Originally endowed with right eyes, I am experiencing the self and realizing the self. How can you not give me the transmission?" Master Dobi smiles and leaves it there. Later, Soko practices in the order of Master Tando Bunjun. One day, Tando asks Soko, "Why are you missing half your nose today?" Soko says, "I am a disciple in the order of Hobo." Tando says, "Unreliable Zen priest." While Soko is reading a sutra, Tando asks, "What sutra are you reading?" Soko says, "The Diamond Sutra." Tando says, "This Dharma is even and balanced, without high and low. Why is Ungozan mountain high and Hobozan mountain low?" Soko says, "This Dharma is even and balanced, without high and low." Tando says, "You have managed to become a real arch-priest." On another day, while Tando is watching the 10 Hell Kings be cleansed, he asks the veteran monk Soko, "What is the name of this eunuch?" Soko says, "His name is Ryo." Tando rubs his head and says, "Why is it that, though my name is Ryo, I am without one of those hoods?" Soko says, The hood is missing, but the nostrils are very much alike. Tando says, unreliable Zen priest. Tando one day asked Soko, "Veteran monk Ko, you are able to understand at once the principles of my here and now Zen. If I let you explain it, you are able to explain it. If I let you experience it, you are able to experience it. If I let you conduct eulogies of the ancients, discussions of the ancients, informal talks, general preaching, and requests for the benefit of instruction, you are able to conduct them. But there is just one thing that is not yet present in you. Do you know what it is or not?" Soko says, "What thing is not yet present?" Tando says, "You lack only this one kind of understanding. Aha! If you are without this one kind of understanding, when I preach to you in my quarters, then you have Zen. But as soon as you leave my quarters, you have lost it completely. When you are fully awake and thinking, then you have Zen. But as soon as you fall asleep, you have lost it completely. If you are like that, how can you deal with life and death?" Soko says, that is just Soko's doubt. Several years later, Tando falls sick. Soko asks, 100 years after the master, whom should Soko rely upon in order to complete the great matter? Tando entrusts him as follows. There is a man called Gon of Ha. I myself am not acquainted with him. Nevertheless, I am sure that if you meet him, you will be able to accomplish the great matter. Once you have met him, do not visit another. Practice Zazen when born again in a later age. When we examine this story, it is clear that Tando does not sanction Soko at all. Soko tries again and again to become enlightened, but in the end he lacks one thing, and he neither supplies the one thing nor gets free of the one thing. Previously, Master Dobi had refused Soko the certificate of succession and urged him by saying, "You have something which is not yet mature." We must credit Master Dobi with clarity in seeing a person's markings. That which is just Soko's doubt, he does not penetrate, does not get free of, does not break open, and does not doubt as the great doubt. He has no state hindered by doubt. Heedlessly to have requested the certificate of succession is a rash attitude in learning in practice. An extreme lack of will to the truth and an utmost lack of veneration of the ancients. We must say that he is without profound insight, and without the makings of the truth. He is an extreme case of negligence in practice. Through greed for fame and love of profit, he wants to break into the inner sanctum of the Buddhist patriarchs. It is pitiful that he is ignorant of the Buddhist patriarch's words. He does not understand that veneration of the ancients is just experience of the self, and he neither hears nor learns that to scour the bequeathed teachings of myriad generations is realizations of the self. As a result, he has wrongness like this, and he has self-delusion like this. Because he is like this, in the lineage of Zen Master Soko, there is not one true nose ring, or even half of one, but there are many whose basis is unreal. Failure to understand the Buddha Dharma and failure to not understand the Buddha Dharma is like this. Monks of the present must painstakingly learn in practice. Do not be negligent and proud. Soko, according to Tando's assignment, after Tando's passing, joins the order of Zen Master Engo at Tenei Temple in the capital. Engo one day ascends the seat of formal preaching. Soko experiences a mystical realization, and he reports his realization to Engo. Engo says, "Not yet," although the disciple's state is like that. You have never clarified the great Dharma. On another day, in formal preaching in the Dharma hall, Engo quotes Master Goso Hoen's words on phrases of existence and phrases of non-existence. Soko, on hearing these words, attains the state of great peace and joy in the Dharma. Again, he expresses his understanding to Engo. Engo laughs and says, "I wonder whether I deceived you." This is the story of how Zen Master Soko latterly practices under Engo. In Engo's order, he is assigned the post of chief clerk, but no definite attainment is visible in him, either before or after that time. In his own informal preaching and formal preaching, he does not describe attainment. Remember, although chroniclers have said that he realized a mystical realization, and have recorded that he attained the state of great peace and joy in the Dharma, he experienced no such thing. Do not think him important. He is a student of learning in practice, nothing more. Zen Master Engo is an eternal Buddha and the most venerable person throughout the 10 directions. Not since Obaku has there been a venerable patriarch like Engo. He is an eternal Buddha who might be rare even in other worlds, but there are few people or gods who know it. The Saha kingdom is a pitiful place. Now when we refer to the Dharma preaching of the eternal Buddha Engo and examine the veteran monk Soko, it is apparent that Soko has never had wisdom that could match the Master's. He has never had the same wisdom as the Master, and much less has he ever realized, even in a dream, wisdom that surpassed the Master's. So remember, Zen Master Soko is not equal to his Master's virtue, reduced by half. He merely relates to others' lines from the Flower Adornment, Saramgama, and other sutras, reciting them from memory. He has never had the bones and marrow of a Buddhist patriarch. In Soko's thoughts, the viewpoint retained by great and small hermits, those merely led by the spirits that inhabit grass and trees, is the Buddha Dharma. If he imagined this viewpoint to be the Buddha Dharma, clearly he has never mastered the great truth of the Buddhist patriarchs. After Engo, he does not travel to other districts and does not visit other good counselors, but randomly leads monks in practice as the master of a big temple. The words he has left behind never reach the periphery of the great Dharma. Nevertheless, those who do not know think that Zen Master Soko is not abashed even next to the ancients. Those who see and who know have decisively concluded that he is not enlightened. In the end, not having clarified the great Dharma, he is only babbling in vain. It is thus evident that Master Dobi of Tozan Mountain, being clear in his insight into the future, was certainly not wrong. Students of Zen Master Soko, even those of later ages, have never stopped resenting Master Dobi. But Master Dobi only refuses to sanction Soko. Master Bunjun's refusals are more severe than the refusal of Dobi, who finds fault with Soko during each encounter. Yet Soko's students do not resent Master Bunjun. As how stupid should we see the people of the present and the past who have hated Master Dobi. In general, although many in the great kingdom of Sung call themselves the descendants of the Buddhist patriarch, few have studied the truth, and so there are few who teach the truth. This point is also evidenced by the above episode. It was like this even in the Shoko era. the present is incomparably worse than that age. Now people have become the leaders of monks without knowing what the truth of the Buddhist patriarchs might even be like. Remember, in the authentic transmission of the certificate of succession from Buddha to Buddha and from patriarch to patriarch, in India in the West and in China in the East, the lineage from Shobogenzo Mountain is the authentic transmission. From the lineage of Shobogenzo Mountain, the authentic transmission naturally passed to Tozan, without ever being known by others of the 10 directions. All those who know it are the descendants of Tozan, and they impart themselves to monks through voice and word. Throughout his life, Zen Master Soko has never understood the phrases experience of the self and realization of the self. How much less could he have penetrated other realities? And how much less could any later student following Zen veteran Soko have understood the words experience of the self? In conclusion, expressions of the self and expressions of the external world expressed by Buddhist patriarchs inevitably include a Buddhist patriarch's body-mind and a Buddhist patriarch's eyes, because they are a Buddhist patriarch's bones and marrow. They are beyond ordinary people's attainment of the skin. Preached to the assembly at Kippo Temple in Etsu-u on the 29th day of the 2nd lunar month in the 2nd year of Kangen.